Good morning, friends. Apologize for the early technical difficulties. Great to see you and welcome to another Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown show brought to you by MikesMMAPicks here on this Saturday morning, where we have UFC Vegas 61. Mackenzie Dern taking on Yan Xiaonan for all the marbles in a strawweight matchup that should be an exciting bout for however long it lasts. So let's kick things off here, where we have the first fight of the night, Randy Costa taking on Guido-Cannetti. This bout takes place at 135 pounds. We have Randy Costa, who is coming in as a minus 285 betting favorite. He has a lot to prove here, and he's taking on one of the oldest fighters in this bantamweight division, Guido-Cannetti, who, you watch back the Manny Martinez fight, looked like Manny Martinez had that win on a silver platter sitting there for him, potentially could have knocked Guido-Cannetti out. Now, Guido-Cannetti has been flatlined by Alejandro Perez on the Ultimate Fighter way back when. Guido-Cannetti, now 42 years of age, coming up on his 43rd birthday in December. In this spot, you watch back the Randy Costa-Tony Kelly fight. Oof, man, bad look, but still room for improvement. 28 years of age, longer fighter here, somebody who has some skills to speak of. Watch the Yanez fight back. He was lighting Yanez up on the feet in that first round. That jab was pinpoint accurate. And in this spot, the under 1.5, if you got in between 140 and 150, I also see the Randy Costa inside the distance line. That was hovering around minus 175, 190-ish. I would not be playing the minus 500. Fight doesn't go the distance. But if you are looking for paths to victory here, Randy Costa should put Guido-Cannetti's lights out sometime early in this fight. I just see Cannetti being too hittable on the feet. He will throw everything into his strikes. And in my eyes, Cannetti here, this is a setup spot for Randy Costa. He's got a lot to prove. Said he spent the 11 months in the boxing gym, and he'll need it here. Now, Cannetti's path to victory is likely to try to extend Randy Costa. Now, this fight does take place in the smaller octagon, so be aware that there will be less room to be evasive here. So give me Randy Costa inside the distance. And I like the under 1.5, under 2.5, but I'm not touching the fight. Doesn't go the distance at minus 400 or 500. Next up, where we have Julia Stoliarenko taking on Chelsea Chandler. Chelsea Chandler was tipping the scales around 140 pounds. Somebody who is struggling, looks like she's struggling to make this weight class. You look up and down her resume, she has some extra adipose tissue on her body. Somebody who, she looks like a raw young Vanderlei Silva who is winging hooks. And I did not like what I saw in her earlier matchups here against King and others. The defensive tendencies on the feet are a concern, but this fight will likely hit the mat. Chelsea Chandler, southpaw fighter, who's going to try to take this fight to the mat and basically bully her opponent Stoliarenko. Stoliarenko, if I watch her fights, and she's live for an armbar at any moment. So be prepared for that. Take a look at the Stoliarenko submission line. More experience here, getting better every fight out. I don't trust Chandler here, and I'll be picking Stoliarenko to win. Next up, Maxime Grishin taking on Felipe-Lins. Felipe-Lins coming in as a plus 135 underdog here. Grishin sitting at minus 165. This is a fight where both of these fighters are difficult to trust. Grishin, we've seen him in previous matchups get out grappled. And one thing he can do, though, is strike. And Lins has shown some chinks in his armor throughout his career. I also don't trust the durability of Lins here. The better kickboxer, Grishin, in my eyes, is a worthy favorite here. But Lins does have some power to speak of. And we saw in PFL what he was able to do. And granted, he's had a very poor UFC run so far, but we've seen him perform well sporadically at times. So give me Maxime Grishin, but not with much confidence. I think there are better spots to seek out on this card. Remember, you don't want to be throwing your units around like water. You want to pick your spots and be mindful of those opportunities. Let's take a look at the comment section here. Good morning, Donnie. Great to see you. Excellent. Jazz, pleasure to have you here, sir. Wishing you a blessed Saturday morning as we continue throughout this fight day. Sergio, great to have you here. We're going to get to a interesting matchup next where we have Brendan Allen taking on Yusuff-Shainis. Went back recently and watched the Brad Tavares fight against Jotko, where Jotko, I'm not sure what was going on there, man. He is not the most durable fighter. You watch Jotko, he's a fighter who will fight smart. He will fight hard for your money, but also, I don't want to say he's brittle, but when push comes to shove, if he gets caught up in firefights, he does have a tendency to break down. And Brendan Allen, win or lose, typically brings the fight to his opponents and is somebody who has been prone to making not only mistakes, but he's had trouble making reads in fights. When the Sean Strickland matchup, you watch that back and he was running into some big problems there, inability to make adjustments on the mat, going submission over position at times, overextending himself and getting caught. The Puna fight, the Soriano fight, that was something that stuck out to me. That was a fight where he fought for 15 hard minutes and looked great. Yusuff-Shainis is going to be moving. He's going to be using that footwork. Allen would be suited to try to take the legs out from under Jotko. That's going to be a challenge. I like Allen here in this spot. The Tavares fight. Tavares, his last two TKO victories. One was Jotko, and then you look back at the other fight. It was Phil Baroni, I believe, back in 2011. So it had been a long time for him to do that. Brendan Allen here, we've seen his grappling ability on display. He's only 26 years of age. I think this is Brendan Allen's fight to win. I'll be picking him to win. Next up, where we have Joaquim Silva taking on Jesse-Ronson. Both of these fighters are nearing the end of their road. Joaquim Silva is only 33 years of age, though. Jesse-Ronson, 36 years of age. Ronson's the one who's had the USADA issues. Could have fooled me with Joaquim Silva, who's looked incredible on the scales every time out, but he has been running into issues with his chin. And the past two fights has been chin checked. Another thing that concerned me, the Jared Gordon fight, that took a few months off my life, I believe. Oh my gosh, what a sweat that was. Joaquim Silva is a fighter who can get caught up in firefights, was getting teed off on by Jared Gordon for a significant amount of time in that bout. Here, Jesse-Ronson looked good on the scales. Both of these fighters looked phenomenal on the scales, had an icy face-off. This leads me to believe that we are going to see a finish here. Just stylistically, Ronson looking horrific against Rafa Garcia last time out. So I'm looking at that under 2.5. Fight doesn't go the distance. I think that's a better spot than trying to trust either of these fighters at their respective money line. But if you ask me to make a pick here, Silva, if he doesn't get knocked out, has a little bit more to offer from a skill set perspective. And Ronson, go back and watch some of his old fights, man. I believe back 2013, 2014, he was in there against Michel Prazeres and also a prime Francisco Trinaldo, who we'll be speaking about later on in this breakdown, and went to a split decision in both of those matchups. So I'll be picking Silva here, though. I think he's got a little bit more in the tank. A couple of things that concern me, though, are his that he's slowed down and that he almost moves like a zombie at times. Let's be honest. The guy has trouble moving, does not move his head off the center line, and could potentially get knocked out again. But I'll be picking Silva, and I like the under 2.5 there. Next up, we have a bout that has been rebooked multiple times. Alexei Oleinik taking on Latifi. Latifi coming in as a minus 185 favorite. It looked like Oleinik, he's heavy. He's looking softer than usual in this spot. And I'm not sure what his plan was in camp, because this seems to be a little bit different body type than we're used to seeing of Alexei Oleinik. Now, both of these guys are getting up there. By the way, up and down this card, you have fighters who are they're on the older end of the spectrum here. A few fighters who are actually older than me, so that says something. In this spot, Latifi, I see him trying to get his wrestling going. Now, when he does that, could he get sucked into getting Ezekiel choked at some point? People are saying that Latifi's lack of a neck is going to prevent him from being submitted. I don't think that's going to stop Oleinik from trying to find something here, try to lock something up. But Latifi, he could also end this fight via strikes. Latifi can crack, but he's got limited volume, and this fight will likely be won or lost on the mat. I'll be leaning Latifi here, but I'm not going to be touching that minus 185 betting line. This fight, seeing Oleinik on the scales was a concern of mine, so I don't think this fight's going to go the distance, but I would be trying to hunt out a better line than minus 250 for fight doesn't go the distance, because we've seen fighters, heavyweights, who really aren't they aren't willing to go for the kill, as some of the lighter weight classes, they have more gas in the tank, and once you're running on fumes, sometimes it ends up being some time against the fence where you're clinching and stalling, trying to get your breath back. But give me Latifi in that spot. Next up, where we have Vyacheslav-Borshchev, Slava Claus, coming in as a plus 150 underdog, taking on a well-rounded fighter in Mike Davis. Mike Davis, somebody who is coming in as a minus 190 betting favorite. Now, he could have been had in the minus 170s at one point earlier in the week. Mike Davis is a jack of all trades. He can strike with you. He can compete on the mat. We saw last time out, Borshchev ran into some adversity against Mark Diakase. Mark Diakase, primarily known as a striker, and saw that there was a big time weakness if you're able to clinch and extend Borshchev. He runs into some problems. Now, Borshchev is a incredibly skilled striker, somebody who's going to try to land a fight-ending strike on you and will empty his tank going for the finish. There's no doubt about that. Mike Davis is going to have to try not to get completely caught up in a firefight here where he gets caught and countered. So that is a concern of mine. But Mike Davis does have a number of advantages here, namely the ground game, namely the cardio, and also as far as durability goes. You go back and watch that Davies-Borshchev fight. There were some signs, some red flags there that were concerning for me for Borshchev. He was on the verge of getting taken out in that fight. Now, Mike Davis was in a war against Mason Jones, has had surgery. Looks like he has a little bit different of a body type this time around. So you got to wonder how the cardio is going to hold up here. But Mike Davis is, in my eyes, the rightful favorite, and I'll be picking him to win. Next up, where we have a catchweight bout at 140 pounds, Daniel Santos making his second UFC appearance. Last time out was systematically picked apart by Julio Arce, taking on John Castaneda. John Castaneda coming in as a minus 190 betting favorite. Now, this is an interesting spot here. I initially, after watching some of the tape, I was like, man, if Santos can draw Castaneda into a firefight, he does not slow down, and he is willing to just continue marching forward. But Castaneda has a bit of a wrestling advantage here, and Santos, when I watch him fight, doesn't necessarily put everything together. He was striking at, I believe, a 22% clip throughout his Arce fight and other bouts. He's not, there's, as far as accuracy goes, he's not very accurate. He will try to chop down his target that's in front of him. But a concern of mine is, number one, the lack of head movement. Number two, he doesn't really care at what's coming back at him. He will just march forward and the shoot-a-box style, march forward and try to annihilate whatever's in front of you. But Castaneda is a veteran, somebody who's been around the game a while, and somebody who has a tendency, as we've seen in previous fights, fight smart game plans. And I think that's what it's going to take here. Now, if Castaneda gets drawn into a firefight, then Santos is going to be live. And if Santos doesn't spend a lot of time on his back, then he will be live. But Castaneda better be ready to bring his wrestling shoes to this matchup. I'll be picking Castaneda here, but Daniel Santos is a live underdog if he can start hitting the target. And that's a concern of mine. He may potentially not be hitting the target. So give me John Castaneda there. And I'm not going out of my way to play the minus 190 there, but I believe he does end up winning this fight. Now, very interesting spot here where we have Sodiq Yusuff taking on Dern-Yan. Dern-Yan, I was watching other interviews where he said that this is going to be a deeper cut, and it looked like it was. He was the last to the scale yesterday. Sodiq Yusuff sitting at a minus 1070 betting favorite. Yes, you got that right. We're sitting over 1,000 betting favorite here. And Yusuff is the much more refined striker of the two. Shainis is a bit of a grinder. You watch the competition he's faced. This is a guy who fought somebody with over 100 losses in mixed martial arts. I don't even know how that is possible to accrue that many losses. Shainis is a grinder. He's somebody who's, you watch the tape, he actually fundamentally seems to be doing things the right way for the most part and passes the eye test. But then you watch the competition that he's faced, and he hasn't fought any real competition out there. And Yusuff is, in my eyes, on the verge of being top 15 at this weight class. Somebody who is a fighter who is very clean when he fights. And of course, I like Yusuff in this spot, but not at that number. And I think if you play Yusuff inside the distance, or even fight doesn't go the distance, was sitting at minus 190 at one book. Minus 165 was Yusuff inside the distance. I believe he has a path to earn a stoppage victory. You watch the Gabriel Benitez fight, and there have been others where this kid can crack. Arnold Allen was able to show Sodiq Yusuff that there were some levels here, but Don-Shainis, in my eyes, is not ready to compete and grind for 15 minutes against somebody with the striking prowess of Sodiq Yusuff. So give me Sodiq Yusuff and inside the distance there. I think that is a decent number when you're looking at the this tremendously wide line and the power of Yusuff. I don't think Shainis has been hit by the striker that Yusuff is. Next up, where we have Raoni Barcelos taking on Trevin Jones. Trevin Jones coming in as a plus 190 betting underdog. Trevin Jones is a fighter who will lull you into a situation where you're winning the fight and then he will unload on you. And we've seen what's fascinating about Trevin Jones is you look up and down his resume and he's not really known for being a knockout artist, but does have significant power in his hands. And Raoni Barcelos is one of the most well-rounded bantamweights, 35 years of age, somebody who has fought very, very stiff competition. I was very impressed with Victor Henry and his outing against Raoni Barcelos, but you also watched the end of that fight. And I know Henry was the short notice replacement. And they did bump the fight back a couple of weeks. But Barcelos wasn't giving up on himself. He was fighting until the end. And as far as volume goes, as far as the wrestling goes, submission prowess, Raoni Barcelos has Trevin Jones beat by a significant margin. Now, if Trevin Jones wins this fight, how does he do it? He does it by knockout. But Barcelos hasn't been knocked out in his career. And I do have concerns about Barcelos' lack of head movement. When he was starting to run out of gas, midway point in the Victor Henry fight, he wasn't moving that well and wasn't getting out of the way of the strikes that were headed his way. And Victor Henry actually has a interesting matchup against Rafael Assunção coming up in the near future, but he's sitting in the minus 300s. Back to this fight, though, Raoni Barcelos, I believe he is the rightful favorite here. If you're able to lock in Barcelos in the minus 190s, props to you. But Trevin Jones is a power puncher and is alive. He's alive at any moment to land a fight-ending strike. It's going to be up to Barcelos to take this fight to the mat and drain the hell out of Trevin Jones. Start draining that power. So give me Barcelos. And he's a very smart fighter. The Timur Valiev fight, you go back and watch the Said Nurmagomedov fight. That was a great fight where he performed very well. And it wasn't too long ago. So Barcelos is going to be my pick. Next up, wow, where we have Randy Brown. Look at the size discrepancy here, taking on Francisco Trinaldo. Trinaldo also 44 years of age, getting up there, coming in as a plus 255 betting underdog, taking on Randy Brown, who sits at minus 330. Now, Randy Brown could have been had in the minus 280s, 290s a couple of weeks ago. This line has gone out a little bit further here. And it is a little bit concerning. It is a little bit concerning, especially when you watch back the Gooden fight and you watch the Chaos Williams fight. And Randy Brown, man, for as great as he is, as far as using his length, he also has a susceptibility to being caught at times and getting dropped. And I watch back the tape on Trinaldo, and Trinaldo is a master at getting on the inside of opponents. And he could potentially have some success here against Randy Brown. But Randy Brown's so slick. When he throws those straight punches, he looks pretty out there at times. And he does have wrestling and some jiu-jitsu to speak of. I was at his fight against Dwyer. I don't know if that was 2017 or so. And we saw that put to use there. Trinaldo, I mean, he's in his mid-40s, somebody who hasn't fallen off a cliff yet. It could happen at any moment. I like Brown inside the distance. If there's going to be a play made, I see he's going to, the longer this fight goes, That's one thing that Randy Brown does have. He has great cardio, and he could really put it on Trinaldo late here. Trinaldo always dangerous early to land the knockout, and it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Trinaldo land something heavy on Randy Brown, especially early. But Brown inside the distance is something that's worthy of a look at this point. Good morning, Marcus. Great to see you today. Cheers to you. Really looking forward to UFC 280 and a bunch of cards that are coming up in the near future, and appreciate your content, Marcus. So continue doing your thing. Let's get back to the main event of the evening, where we have a strawweight bout between Mackenzie Dern and Yan Xiaonan. Yan Xiaonan coming in as a plus 190 betting underdog, somebody who we saw when it came to the grappling against Carla Esparza was just blown out of the water, had no get up game in that fight, but then came back against Marina Rodriguez, looked fantastic there, almost took that decision off of her. Mackenzie Dern is a fighter who has a clear path to victory here if she's able to take this fight to the mat. What needs to be highlighted in this matchup, and I'm not sure if any other handicappers have focused significantly on this, but is it's the footwork in this matchup. The footwork of Yan Xiaonan is much better than Mackenzie Dern's, and Mackenzie Dern, she better be thankful that this fight takes place inside of the smaller octagon, because if this was inside of the larger octagon, I think we'd see the odds be a little bit closer here. Dern will still have to find a way to close distance, because she's not as I know she's training under Jason Perillo, and her game's improving every time out, but she's not the level of striker of Yan Xiaonan. Yan Xiaonan is somebody who I've been very high on throughout her career, but she's also in her mid-30s now. At one point, she was looking for a matchup against Weili Zhang, and wow, can you imagine that? I actually would love to see that fight. And she's open to it also. She'd like to face her country lady. So Mackenzie Dern, it only takes one time this fight hitting the mat for her to win. And she could be competitive on the feet for times. I'm not saying she's going to win the striking. I think Yan Xiaonan is clearly the better striker here, but if Yan Xiaonan makes one mistake, this fight hits the mat, and then you're in Mackenzie Dern's world. And that is a real concern of mine if I was on the Yan Xiaonan fight, if I was on her side of things here. So if Dern didn't have the bear trap of a submission threat at any point, I would be all over Yan Xiaonan here. But Dern, the longer this fight goes, the other thing is this is 5 rounds. So that also, I believe, helps Dern in this spot. So I think that's why she's the rightful favorite. And I'll be picking Dern to win via submission late. But it wouldn't surprise me to see Yan Xiaonan have the better of the striking exchanges early, and also be ahead on the scorecards headed into the 3rd or 4th round. Wouldn't surprise me to see this fight go the distance either. Both of these fighters are very, very tough. So it could be Mackenzie Dern to win inside the distance and do so late. JP, good morning. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so Mackenzie Dern inside the distance late is going to be the pick here. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Want to remind you to go get what's yours, and remember to tail third-party tracked winners here. There are tons of folks putting out content, and just do your due diligence. Check their third-party track record. Everybody should have a third-party track record out there. And you don't want to be wasting your time listening to folks who are legitimate long-term losing bettors. So make sure you're doing the right thing, and continue to go get what's yours. Do your own independent homework as well. I recommend that. You want to back fighters who pass the eye test with great matchups. And let's do this, my friends. Continue this journey and have a great Saturday. Thanks again.